Nobody was meant to say it so openly. For years, owners avoided numbers in public. They spoke of growth, culture, momentum, progress, safe words, comfortable words, words that wouldn't upset anyone. But something shifted. And when it did, pretending became impossible. It didn't start with a press conference or on television. It started in a private room, where screens showed raw data instead of highlights. Viewership curves, revenue charts, partner projections. That's where the silence began, because one owner noticed something unusual. The league was louder than ever, but the money wasn't moving the same way. Social media buzz was huge, yet real viewership didn't match the noise. Then he isolated one variable, Caitlin Clark. The charts jumped, not slowly, not gradually, but violently. At first, he assumed it was a glitch, a one-week anomaly that would level out. But it didn't. Every appearance, every highlight, every mention of her name created spikes no marketing campaign could explain. That's when the owner asked the question nobody wanted to answer. What happens if we remove everything except her? The result was terrifying. When they did, the model collapsed. What remained was the truth. She wasn't just part of the growth. She was the growth. Weeks later came the NBA on NBC moment. It was presented as a crossover, a simple segment, a symbolic bridge. No pressure, no expectation. Then the cameras rolled. Caitlin Clark didn't act like a guest. She didn't play cute. She didn't overreact. She sat calmly and broke the game down like she had always belonged on that stage.
Caitlin Clark, her NBC, the numbers for that game have finally been released. The executives over there already speaking very highly of her. Is there a potential position in the future? Are they going to be expanding her role? More appearances to come? Sunday night basketball, milestone for NBA on NBC Sports. Lakers-Knicks, 4.5 million viewers on NBC plus Telemundo, 5 million peak audience. Most watched regular season Sunday night NBA game since 2002, excludes Christmas Day. Sunday night NBA games. Now, a Sunday night NBA, is that ABC included or the ABC games Saturday night games from back in the day?
And millions watched. Not just WNBA fans. Not basketball diehards. Regular people. Inside NBC Sports, producers saw something they hadn't seen in years. Viewer retention didn't drop, it increased. People stayed through the segment. They rewound clips. They shared them beyond sports circles. That night did more than generate buzz. It created leverage. The next morning, the owner saw updated projections, and that's when he stopped protecting feelings. According to multiple insiders, he said it plainly. This isn't incremental. It's exponential. Then he repeated the number 50 times. 50 times the projected viewership impact. 50 times the revenue acceleration. 50 times the partner interest compared to baseline expectations.
Spotlight that comes with an NBA national broadcast. So he loved every bit of what Caitlin Clark did and what she brought to the broadcast. Now, this is where he started talking a little bit about having Caitlin Clark back more than that March 29th announcement. So it says NBC Sports is planning to bring Clark back later this season. Cordella confirmed that she is scheduled to appear as an analyst for the Knicks versus Thunder on March 29th. As we know, he also added that he hopes to see more of Clark moving forward, signaling that the door is open for additional appearances. While no expanded role has been formally announced, the comment suggested genuine interest rather than casual praise. So, hey man, I don't know. We might see Caitlin working that booth. That'll be dope though, man. That'll be dope. Of course, with everything going on with the WNBA, we don't even know if we're going to have a season, man. Nonsensical.
That number was never meant to leave the room, but it did. And once it did, everything unraveled. If one player can multiply a league by 50, that means something uncomfortable. It means the league wasn't the engine. She was. Word spread fast. Media insiders confirmed it quietly. Advertisers noticed immediately. Conversations shifted. Suddenly, calls were about positioning around her, not balance across the league. Jealousy followed. Not loud, but professional jealousy. Other leagues saw the NBC numbers. They saw the audience migration. They saw attention moving. And attention is currency. That's when tension rose, because for years the unspoken rule was simple. No one player becomes bigger than the system. The system stays in control. Caitlin Clark broke that rule without trying. She didn't demand anything. She didn't threaten. She didn't complain. She showed up and performed. And that performance forced the owner's hand. He went public. Not with anger, but with math. He revealed how viewership behaved before her appearances. Flat, predictable, controlled. Then he showed what happened after. Spikes so sharp they looked unreal. Revenue lines bending upward like someone had grabbed them and pulled. That's when he said the sentence that changed the season.
WNBA presented to the players. This is the most recent proposal, and I guess they also brought this to the meeting on Monday. It's so funny, on all of these documents in the corner it says confidential, but they are currently circulating all around Twitter. So I want to go over some of these bullet points with you guys. The first slide, it said WNBA CBA proposal, goals for a win-win CBA. Number one, substantially increase player salaries to reflect recent future business growth. That number one bullet point is something that Adam Silver has said many of times when he is asked about the WNBA CBA. This is, again, it seems to be why the two sides are on different sides. It seems like the WNBA wants to raise the salary enough to where they don't have to give a percentage of this gross revenue that the players want. And that's where the players are feeling like there's such a disconnect, because it seems like they would prefer the revenue split over the salaries just increasing. But again, you can see here, substantially increased player salaries, which they have, by the way. They've increased the salaries like 6 times the amount of what they used to be. Number two, promote business health and profitability. And that has been such a big thing in all of these. And a lot of fans have chimed in like, the WNBA has never been profitable. And the WNBA is still young, you guys. It is going into its 30th season. And when we did the comparison of WNBA salaries in their 30th season, if they take this deal, and NBA salaries in their 30th season, and obviously we did the math for inflation, all those things, the WNBA players will actually be making more than NBA players were in their 30th season. So that's why I just don't think this deal is such a bad deal like all of the players seem to think it is, but the WNBA is still focused on good business health and profitability. Number three, maintain incentives for team and league investments. Now, this next slide shows
underestimated was a polite word. The reality was worse. They didn't know who was carrying them. The moment that statement hit the internet, the reaction was instant. Fans argued. Comment sections exploded. Other leagues went quiet, because silence usually means one thing. They were watching. And what they saw scared them. Caitlin Clark didn't just bring people to the WNBA. She brought them to basketball broadcasts in general. NBC saw new viewers. Sponsors saw new demographics. The pie didn't just get bigger, it shifted. That shift created enemies. You could feel it in the coverage, in the tone, in the sudden attempts to reframe the narrative, to remind people growth is collective, not individual. But the owner had already said too much. Once numbers are public, you can't put them back in the box. That's when jealousy turned into panic. If one player can drive this much value, she doesn't need the league as much as the league needs her. That realization changes power instantly. The owner didn't backtrack, he doubled down.
So, obviously Caitlin Clark's voice, the biggest voice that can speak on this, because she's been the catalyst for the WNBA being in position for a transformative CBA, a change in salaries, the way that they're headed. So it's good to hear that she's confident. She's always expressed so much love around the league and what it can become and what it was and all of those things. But nonetheless, it's still got to be a deal that's done. So you can get to the WNBA draft later, after the free agency and after the expansion drafts. But hopefully, that's a good sign for WNBA fans that the league's biggest star is saying she's confident a CBA will get done. Then there were some other topics hit up on the broadcast as well, including her wanting to play at Madison Square Garden. That is where she was broadcasting from, the Knicks and the Lakers. It is a great arena. I've spent a lot of time in the Garden.
Lakers and the Knicks taking center stage here for the 302nd overall meeting. And for the first time ever, we've got basketball night in America, the first Sunday in February. And we're joined by our special correspondent. Welcome to the team, Caitlin Clark. Yes.
Welcome. MSG for a Knicks game, so it's pretty cool.
I know, it's our first Knicks game, first time feeling the atmosphere. We got to get you to play on this court one day.
We have to talk to Matt Adam about that.
Can we make it mellow? Honestly, if there's someone
Even if it's a preseason game, we got to get it done. I don't think the Liberty will want to move a game over here, but we'll play anybody. That'll be fun.
Yeah. How could you describe maybe the atmosphere your first time in it?
Well, I think as a player, like, this is kind of when you feel the atmosphere the most, is when you're out on the court warming up. So, I mean, there's just a different type of buzz. And obviously when LeBron comes to town, it's probably really different. But, you know, Knicks.
He explained how sponsorship calls changed after NBC, how partners wanted guarantees tied specifically to her appearances, how negotiations that once took months became urgent. That's when people realized something else. She wasn't just changing viewership, she was changing timelines. Deals moved faster. Decisions accelerated. Old excuses disappeared. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark stayed silent. No victory lap, no comments about money, no response to jealousy. She kept playing. That silence was brutal, because when someone changes everything without saying a word, the system looks weak. The owner later tried to soften the blow. He spoke about teamwork, league-wide growth, the importance of everyone. But the damage was done 50x. That number stuck. Fans repeated it. Media ran with it. Other leagues watched closely. Behind the scenes, strategies changed overnight. Marketing shifted. Scheduling shifted. Media priorities shifted. Everything pointed to the same uncomfortable truth. Caitlin Clark wasn't riding a wave. She was the wave.
More iconic figure in basketball in the women's game right now, or the game in general. So we said, let's have a bigger conversation. And it's just so crazy that it feels like every other sport will just come out and say what it is besides the WNBA. The NBA is not scared to acknowledge that there's no more iconic figure in basketball. Not just the women's game, but possibly the game in general than Caitlin Clark. But we would not hear that in the WNBA space. We wouldn't hear that from WNBA media. But the NBA media and the NBA and the league itself is not scared to say it. Like we've seen it when Caitlin does golf events. It just seems like every league but her own is not scared to say the truth. But
the jealousy wasn't personal. It was structural. Other leagues saw attention drifting, saw advertisers asking new questions, saw fans deciding where to spend time. And time is the one thing you can't manufacture. By the end of the month, the league had transformed. Not because of a rule change, not because of a rebrand, but because one player forced honesty. The owner didn't intend to create controversy. He intended to explain success, but in doing so he exposed dependence. And dependence changes everything. Caitlin Clark didn't just grow the league. She revealed what it was actually worth. Once a league learns its true value, there's no going back to pretending. This wasn't hype. This was math. This wasn't marketing. This was reality. The reason it shook everyone so deeply is simple. Nobody expected the truth to be this clear, this big, or this tied to one name. That's why the jealousy felt real. That's why the silence was loud. And that's why this moment will be remembered, not as a debut, but as a turning point. The day the owner stopped hiding the numbers. The day the league learned who really drives it. The day Caitlin Clark changed the business of basketball without asking permission. Forever.